Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video, and this camera looks a little dated yet, doesn't it? Let me fix that real quick. Welcome to the new camera setup. That was probably a really bad transition. I just wanted to do something fun to show that there's a new camera, and this will be more or less the way things look from here on out. So I hope you like it. Anyway, let's get right into the video. I just wanted to do something stupid to showcase that. Anyway, let's go.
We were born to pursue knowledge.
Ooh. Having fun with those particles already.
Or we were all born with naught. Before we were given a language,
Okay.
our hands reach out without being taught.
That's kind of neat. Whoa. This water decay here on this character model, that was a really quick decay. I think it's just because per frame everything is going rapidly. It's kind of tricking my eye out a little bit. I probably would have handled that a little bit less aggressively, but that's just me. Looks fine. I'm just pointing it out. I'm being picky. I'm a critic, all right? Anyway.
All are to see. All are to know. We think. We uncover. We theorize. The pursuers then
I love that
throw
little
themselves
thing. I don't
to
know
the
what it
dark
is,
again.
but the design is kind of fun. It's almost cute.
Bequests of the old, dotting our land. Enlightened futures.
I love the
do not grant.
filter of the
Real
water,
enlightenment
like the light
hides
passing
within
through.
These black thorns of the
Oh,
crystals.
whoa, okay.
Originium,
Is that a projection?
harbinger of our calamities.
Or is that just like plastered in there? I'm gonna have to take a closer look at that one. Great reflections. The effects team must have had a blast with this.
Catastrophes engrave our minds.
Oh, that
and
little,
emotions.
the little like flourish on her
But
shoulder.
glitter are our deeds. Time they transcend. Thus we're made acquiescent to all retaliation.
The tear. Beautiful visual storytelling. Oh, the effect in her eye. Oh, the micro expressions. Oh, we're gonna have a field day with that one. Ooh. More of it.
Now we
Oh,
pursue
okay.
at a
Yeah,
border.
I'm talking about that one.
Let only fools remain stagnant. Idly descend as history drags them. Lifeless, eroded, like
Okay.
pebbles become sand.
Really? I'm sorry, I'm noticing stuff I'm gonna mention later. I'm nerding out. Dude, we'll get there.
A dome we shall gaze through.
That was gorgeous.
Not of the land,
There's so much to talk about.
but of
This is gonna be a
world
long
of
video.
thought.
Oh my god.
Forerunners were gone in glares. Aftercomers will seek their vestiges.
The cinematography of
There
this
is
fucking
only
video.
one mark.
Was that a model?
The truth.
I couldn't even tell if that was. I think that was an illustration. I have to take a look at that too. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Plenty to talk about. With that said, we have a new setup for that. So let's go over to the animation discussion setup, shall we? All right. Welcome back. This is still a little new, so it's probably going to be a smidge clunky. I apologize if there's a lot of cuts and such. But yeah. So welcome to my little drawing setup here. I wanted to talk first about this little sequence here. This isn't really necessarily an animation thing specifically, but it is called a dolly zoom, where the background and character are on separate planes, sort of, or what feels like the background is moving while the character stays still. You would lean your camera forward while also using the zoom on the camera to adjust for that distance being changed. It's basically an easy way to give the effect of there being some sort of like a confusion or a moment of absurd reality. Like, it's called the vertigo effect because it was used in the movie Vertigo, and it is utilized a lot in things to kind of showcase that there is something not quite right about the scenario happening. So it's very, very useful in a lot of ways. Stuff like this can be extremely versatile when you're directing and just in general framing your shots in order to get a certain emotion across like that. It makes you immediately go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like you just kind of have that reaction naturally. So that is a really cool thing. Again, not really animation specific, but I thought it was a good example of its use and felt like mentioning it. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about was this sequence here, how you've got like the character sitting there, but all this going on in the background. So like this separation here is what really interests me, because over here on this chunk of the bookcases, that sort of distortion isn't happening. And I was wondering if this whole shadow was sort of projected onto just the background as a flat plate, so there wouldn't be any sort of sense to the shadow to know what's happening in the world and react accordingly to certain geometry around it. But I'm not sure, because of the separation, if one or the other is correct or if it's like a mix of both. Maybe it's just where they placed the shadow in the sequence here, because it feels like, as you kind of scroll through, that there's really not much else of that going on. So it leads me to believe that maybe the sequence here with the shadow is maybe having just some basic distortion added on as like a filter in a post-processing, or it is just being slapped onto the layer to give it that sort of effect, or there's so many ways this could be. What's likely is that in shots like this, it is just a projection being placed in between the characters and the background. And for that other one that I had just shown, where it did have it reacting to a chunk of it, that could have been just where they placed it in the Z space, the distance from the camera, where it was affecting one piece of geometry and not the other through that projection. So there's a few ways, but either way, really interesting to me how that looks. I mentioned this one while I was, of course, going through here, how I like that there is this little like collection of bubbles here that's just kind of flaking out from the edge, and it almost seems like there's some sort of like an air around the character, like a pocket, a super thin layer that is just not being affected here. But I suppose it could just be a general effect showing that she's still kind of in the water and moving. I'm not entirely positive, but I just think that details like that are really cool, and it was worth mentioning that much. And here we've reached one of my favorite parts about this specific video, is the use of micro expressions in this spot right here with her eyes. There is, of course, the effects animation happening in the eyes, that swirling. It's a very anime-esque thing to do. It just kind of is supposed to show the welling up of tears, and you can see it down at the bottom, how the tears are kind of appearing there. It's really cool when I see stuff like that, because it means there's a legitimate effort being put into making sure that a character's animation is being properly sent. You can see these sort of these little microscopic but still readable little shifts in her expression. You can see how in this section the eyebrows coming down, and the whole time the eyes are kind of like shaking a little bit and just kind of scooching around in what feels like rapid and maybe random responses to something. It's probably focus, whatever she's looking at here in this shot, whatever is away from her person. And you get to see yet again in this sequence here how her eyes are still doing those darts. You still get to see the tears here and how effective those are. And it's just a really cool little characteristic thing that they don't usually do, you know, like just having these small adjustments to the expression can mean a lot to the emotional weight of a scene. Real actors use those all the time in IRL films, and they are so useful in animation as well. They're not quite as popular because they do take a little bit more time because it's a fine-tuning thing. But that shows how much that they care about the product that they're working on here. The fact that they're willing to add those. Here's actually a sequence where I think they should have used micro expressions and decided to not for whatever reason. This character, as she shifts from this more placated, neutral expression, she should have, while making this smile, maybe have had the pupils, obviously in both of her eyes, shrink down just a little bit, you know, like not too much, but maybe change the shape of the iris, and just overall you could have scaled it down then back up, you know, just to kind of add a this looks like a monocle. They could have added just that little bit more effort on this one as well, and that would have added just a little bit more characterization to that realization in the moment that if there's something clicking, you know, there's a sense of connection between what they just saw and where they're going to be going now. Little things like that, and that's why I like that they added it with the other character. So I wanted to come back to this spot because I think there was something kind of interesting here. I wanted to hold off on saying what it was until I actually got here. But there is this neat little thing that this does. Right here, you see this little spark of power in her hand at the very beginning of this staff being formed. What I think is a staff. I didn't really get a terribly good look at it. There's so much else to look at. But you can see that like there's another piece here that appears, there's another piece that shows up down here, and each piece as it appears just kind of lightens up and then solidifies and connects to itself to in a way just kind of reveal this model underneath it, which I'm not entirely sure how they would have done that. I'm not a CG person, I'm mainly a 2D animator, so these sorts of reveals are a little bit foreign to me. But what I gotta assume is that there's some sort of a turbulent map that goes over this and is basically faded into. So they probably were able to select different sections and make it kind of appear from a point, and then just added a little bit of texture on the end of that using the water to hide those transition lines. But either way, really neat. The water and the particle effects that are being handled in this sequence are just immaculate. They stylistically fit just perfectly, like mwah, beautiful, delicious. Right here, I'm actually impressed because they seem to not be doing too much deforming of the model. You can see like as she swings around here, there is a little bit like right here in her leg. It's just getting closer to the camera where her foot is. And that kind of feels like there's a little bit of sponginess to her leaping, but I'm not seeing a lot of limb deformity. I'm seeing very like on-model usage, which is honestly pretty impressive for as fluid as everything is looking. Usually there would be a little bit more of deforming of the character model in order to get it to work and have certain energy to it. This slide, like I mentioned, looks great. I love the way that that feels. Again, not really any deforming. I want to see as she jumps here if there's any. A little bit of deforming, kind of make her legs a little bit longer. You can definitely tell that between like here to here, I know my camera's kind of covering a smidge of it, but from there to there, there's definitely a little bit of banding. So there's some, but not a lot. And that's all you need. You don't have to overdo it sometimes. Projects like Overwatch utilize a lot of model breaking in order to get their characters to do certain things. And yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm actually really impressed at how dynamic they made it feel without having to rely on breaking the model so much. This sequence right here is really neat. I just wanted to take a look at this in slow motion. The way that the curves happen here, for the record, one of the rules, the laws of animation, is curves, arches. You want everything to kind of have a curve or an arch. You know, you don't want to make just straight lines. You like, if you're making a straight line, even this has kind of a curve. You don't want it to just go bah, you know, like that would be boring. Imagine if she just kind of jumped out the water like that. Like, so having these arches really add a dynamic energy to everything happening in the sequence, and it is super important to have those, especially in moments like this where the character is leaping and landing. But I love the way that this water follows in here. It reminds me a lot of the way that they handled water in the movie Sinbad, DreamWorks movie from many years ago. Beautiful rendering of how they handle water, and the weight of hair and physics underwater is super neat. And the way that they handled those curves in this shot is very reminiscent of that to me. I wanted to revisit this real quick. This will probably be my last point, but I wanted to see if this was a model or an illustration. It looks like it may be a multi-layered illustration that has just been chopped up. There you can see some deformity, some heat lines here at this very slight wobble in between the frames right down here in this section. That is super minor, but very useful in order to sell how hot it is. Little things like that, but I believe that this is just some illustrations. I can't imagine they would have done a model like this intricate from this distance for this short of time. It feels like it would be kind of a waste of resources, but having it be an illustration and then just like chopping it up to multiple layers and then doing all that work in post would make the most sense to me, at least. And it really sells everything. The detail is super nice. It feels like the production quality went up, even though it's something that is arguably easier to do. So I think that's about it. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for dealing with my talking and my little technical spark notes about this video, little bits and pieces here. I hope to do this more now that I'm kind of used to the setup. I've kind of adapted to it through this video, and I hope you all like it because I'm planning on doing more. So thank you all very much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye!